January 24th, 2006. A Tuesday morning in Orlando, Florida, the kind of morning that feels completely ordinary until it isn't. A young woman gets ready for work, steps out of her condominium, and drives away. She never arrives. Her phone goes silent, her car disappears, and the world she left behind is never quite the same again. Her name was Jennifer Kesse. She was 24 years old, ambitious, and by every account, someone who had her life carefully and purposefully on track. Nearly 2 decades have passed since that morning. Investigators have followed hundreds of leads, families have waited, communities have searched. And yet, one haunting piece of surveillance footage continues to baffle law enforcement and true crime researchers worldwide. This is not just a missing persons case. This is one of America's most enduring and deeply unsettling mysteries. And somewhere, hidden within the details, the answer may still be waiting to be found. Before we examine what happened, it is important to understand who Jennifer Kesse truly was as a person. Jennifer was 24 years old, working as a financial professional in Orlando, Florida. She had recently accomplished something many people her age only dream about, purchasing her very own condominium. Those who knew her described Jennifer as organized, responsible, driven, and genuinely excited about the life she was building for herself. Just days before her disappearance, Jennifer had returned from a vacation in the United States Virgin Islands with her longtime boyfriend. By all accounts, she came home happy, refreshed, and looking forward to what the future held. She had a stable career, a new home, loving relationships, and real momentum in her life. There were no visible warning signs, no conflicts, no reasons for concern. Jennifer Kesse was simply a young woman living her life. Nothing about her world suggested that everything was about to change forever. The morning of January 24, 2006 began like any other for Jennifer Kesse. She woke up, got ready, and prepared to make the familiar drive to her workplace in Orlando. Nothing about her routine suggested anything was wrong, but Jennifer never arrived at the office that day. As the hours passed, her co-workers grew increasingly concerned. Phone calls to her went completely unanswered. That silence was deeply out of character for someone known to be responsible and communicative. Worried family members traveled to Orlando to check on her. When they entered her condominium, they found her personal belongings exactly where she had left them. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no indication of forced entry, nothing visibly disturbed. Only one thing was missing. Her vehicle was gone. That single detail was enough to prompt law enforcement to officially open a formal missing person investigation, setting into motion one of the most haunting cases Florida had ever seen. Days into the investigation, a critical discovery shifts everything. Jennifer's black Chevrolet Malibu is located approximately 1 mile from her condominium at a nearby apartment complex. For investigators, finding the vehicle feels like a significant step forward. The car is carefully processed for any evidence that might explain what happened to Jennifer in those missing hours. Then comes what initially appears to be a major breakthrough. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex captures an unknown individual parking Jennifer's car and calmly walking away without any visible sense of urgency or panic. The person moves deliberately, almost casually, as if nothing unusual has occurred. For a brief moment, investigators and Jennifer's family feel a surge of cautious optimism. A real image exists. Someone was seen. It seems like the kind of concrete lead that could crack the case wide open and bring Jennifer home quickly. That hope, however, is about to become far more complicated. But what initially seemed like a breakthrough quickly transformed into one of the most frustrating puzzles in American investigative history. When detectives sat down and reviewed that surveillance recording frame by frame, they uncovered something almost unbelievable. Every single frame capturing the unknown individual also showed their face completely obscured, blocked naturally by the apartment complex's fence posts. It was as if the footage itself was withholding the one answer investigators desperately needed. Law enforcement brought in outside experts and attempted multiple enhancement techniques using the best available technology at the time. Despite every effort, no publicly available technology has ever successfully revealed the identity of that individual. The footage was not deliberately tampered with. The obstruction was simply a cruel coincidence of angle and architecture. Over the years, this brief surveillance clip has been broadcast on national television programs, shared across online platforms, and studied by amateur investigators worldwide. It has since become one of the most recognized and haunting pieces of evidence in American true crime history. With Jennifer still missing and the surveillance footage offering no clear identity, investigators dramatically expand their efforts to find answers. Hundreds of interviews are conducted across a wide network of people, including neighbors, co-workers, construction workers, and local residents throughout the Orlando area. Detectives carefully examine Jennifer's phone records, financial activity, and daily routines, searching for any pattern or anomaly that might point toward what happened. Search teams are deployed to comb through nearby lakes, wooded areas, and vacant properties surrounding her condominium and the location where her vehicle was recovered. The scale of the operation reflects how seriously law enforcement is treating the case. Yet despite the enormous resources committed and the sheer volume of leads pursued, no confirmed evidence emerges establishing what happened to Jennifer after she walked out of her home that Tuesday morning. Every promising lead eventually reaches a dead end, leaving investigators and her family with the same haunting and unanswered question. With the surveillance footage offering no clear identity, investigators turned their full attention to the physical evidence recovered from Jennifer's vehicle and condominium. Forensic teams processed her black Chevrolet Malibu thoroughly, and fingerprints were successfully lifted from the car's surfaces. However, authorities confirmed that some of those prints did not produce a usable match through the available databases at the time. That single detail is quietly devastating. It means someone touched that vehicle, someone whose identity could not be confirmed through any official record. Inside Jennifer's condominium, law enforcement conducted a careful examination of every room. No publicly confirmed signs of a violent struggle were ever reported. Her belongings remained largely in place, creating an eerie sense of normalcy that made the situation even harder to understand. There was no broken furniture, no obvious signs of forced entry, no clear indication of what had happened. The forensic picture was frustratingly incomplete, leaving investigators with more questions than answers at every turn. The unidentified individual captured in that surveillance footage quickly becomes the central focus of the entire investigation. Because this person was seen leaving Jennifer's vehicle and walking away, police officially designate them as a person of interest. It is important to understand what that designation actually means. Authorities are careful to clarify that they have never publicly identified this individual, and they have never confirmed any direct connection between this person and Jennifer's disappearance. The label exists solely because of what the footage shows, nothing more. Yet despite that uncertainty, the images begin spreading rapidly. Television programs feature the grainy frames, newspapers publish the stills, online forums dedicate thousands of posts to analyzing every pixel. Amateur investigators study the figure's height, build, and walking pattern. For years, this circulation continues across every available platform. And yet, despite reaching millions of eyes across the country and beyond, the person's identity remains completely and utterly unknown, leaving investigators no closer to understanding what truly happened. While investigators continued working the case, the weight of Jennifer's disappearance fell heaviest on those who loved her most. Her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse, refused to let the world move on without answers. Rather than retreating into grief, they stepped forward with extraordinary resolve. They gave interviews to national media outlets, organized public awareness campaigns, and kept Jennifer's name in front of the public year after year. Their advocacy was not passive. In 2018, Drew and Joyce took direct legal action against the Orlando Police Department, filing to gain access to years of investigative records that had never been shared with the family. Following a formal legal agreement, those files were finally released. For a family that had spent over a decade asking questions in near silence, receiving those records represented both a hard-won victory and a painful reminder of how much time had already passed without resolution. Their determination never wavered. Investigators and the public have considered several documented theories over the years in an effort to explain what happened to Jennifer Kesse. The first and perhaps most widely discussed centers on the possibility of an opportunistic crime. At the time of Jennifer's disappearance, active construction work was taking place in and around her condominium complex. Workers from multiple crews were regularly present in the area, creating a situation where unfamiliar individuals moving through the neighborhood would not have appeared unusual or out of place. Law enforcement took this possibility seriously, conducting interviews with numerous workers connected to the surrounding area. Investigators worked to account for individuals who had access to the property during that period. However, despite the scope of those interviews and the attention given to this particular line of inquiry, authorities have never publicly identified sufficient evidence linking any specific individual to Jennifer's disappearance. To this day, no one has ever been charged in connection with her case. A second theory considers whether Jennifer may have encountered a complete stranger, someone entirely unrelated to her daily life, her workplace, her neighborhood, or anyone within her immediate surroundings. This line of thinking suggests a random encounter, perhaps someone who saw an opportunity and acted on it. Law enforcement has never confirmed a suspect through this particular direction of inquiry either, leaving it as another possibility without resolution. The third theory, and perhaps the most compelling of all, brings us back to that surveillance footage. The unidentified person captured walking away from Jennifer's car remains the single strongest documented lead across the entire investigation. That individual was there, they had her vehicle, they walked away calmly, as if nothing unusual had occurred. And yet, after nearly 2 decades of public exposure, media coverage, and investigative effort, no authority has ever officially confirmed who that person is. That silence is perhaps the most haunting detail of this entire case. Nearly 20 years after Jennifer Kesse vanished on that January morning, her case continues to hold a powerful grip on the public consciousness. It is not simply the mystery itself that draws people in, but what the case represents, the profound and often painful limitations that law enforcement faces when critical evidence remains incomplete or impossible to verify. When a single piece of surveillance footage becomes the strongest lead in an entire investigation, it speaks to how fragile the line between answers and silence can truly be. The case has inspired documentaries, podcasts, books, and countless hours of online discussion from people around the world who refuse to let Jennifer's name fade into obscurity. Her family has never stopped hoping. Drew and Joyce Kesse have expressed genuine belief that advances in DNA analysis, digital forensics, and image enhancement technology could one day deliver the breakthrough that has eluded investigators for so long. That hope remains alive. The Orlando Police Department confirms that Jennifer Kesse's case remains officially open to this day. Investigators continue to urge anyone with credible information, no matter how small it may seem, to come forward and contact authorities directly. What makes this moment in the documentary particularly meaningful is the broader context surrounding cold cases in recent years. Advances in deoxyribonucleic acid analysis, digital image enhancement, and forensic genealogy have helped solve cases that sat untouched for decades. Families who once believed they would never receive answers have seen justice arrive years, sometimes even generations, later. For Jennifer's family and the investigators who have dedicated significant time to this case, that progress represents something genuinely important. It represents possibility. The surveillance footage still exists. The evidence gathered over nearly 2 decades still exists. And somewhere, someone may hold a piece of information they have never shared. The possibility that a single conversation, a single witness, or a single technological breakthrough could change everything remains very real. On the morning of January 24, 2006, Jennifer Kesse left her condominium expecting nothing more than an ordinary Tuesday. She had plans, ambitions, and a future full of promise. Her car was found. A mysterious individual was captured on surveillance footage, walking calmly away as though nothing had happened. But Jennifer herself has never been located. Nearly 20 years of questions remain completely unanswered. Who parked her car just 1 mile from her home? What happened in those critical moments between the time she left her condominium and the time her vehicle appeared at that apartment complex? Investigators have spent years searching for answers that continue to remain just out of reach. And perhaps the most haunting question of all, could someone watching this documentary right now hold the missing piece that investigators have searched for all these years? If you know anything, please come forward. Jennifer's family is still waiting. Jennifer Kesse was more than a case number. She was a daughter, a partner, a friend, and a young woman with an entire future ahead of her. Her story represents thousands of families across this country who wake up every single day waiting for a phone call that has not yet come. Communities that refuse to let names fade into silence. People who carry photographs and keep porch lights burning year after year. If this documentary moved you, if it made you think, if it stirred something inside you, please share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Your voice matters in keeping these conversations alive. If you want to support this channel's mission to create honest, carefully researched content that honors victims and pursues truth, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear Jennifer's story. The search continues. The names must never be forgotten.